The Russian army has broken through to the Dnipropetrovsk region. The defense of Pokrovsk could not withstand Russia's offensive. Good day, dear friends. We are still with you, continuing to monitor the situation on the front daily. Together, we analyze maps of advancements or retreats and draw conclusions about how specific events will ultimately affect the overall situation at the front. Today, it seems the Russian Aerospace Forces, VKS, have been tasked with significantly increasing the duration of power outages in the Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk regions, if not completely plunging them into darkness. This morning's primary missile strikes are concentrated on these two regions. As of the time of this recording, there have been 14 missile hits in Kharkiv and 12 in the city of Dnipropetrovsk, with additional but fewer strikes in Kremenchuk and Kiev regions. Furthermore, the Russian army is advancing at a serious pace toward the Dnipropetrovsk region. Let's examine everything step by opening the map. We'll begin with the situation near the western part of the city of Selidov, which can also be referred to as the pre-Dnipropetrovsk front. The reason is that movement is directed firmly toward the Dnipropetrovsk region. Yesterday, the overall advancement in this sector was 3 kilometers westward, across an 8-kilometer wide front. The Russian army fully captured Novoyelenivka. Additionally, Russian forces reached and entrenched themselves on the eastern outskirts of Novoyelizavetivka. If Russian troops manage to quickly capture this area, the path to the Dnipropetrovsk region will essentially be open, as only 2 villages, Nadezdinka and Kotlyarivka, remain between the Russian forces and the region. It's worth noting that Nadezdinka, before the conflict, had a population of about 300, while Kotlyarivka had fewer than 100. For comparison, the recently captured Novotroitske had about 600 residents before the war. While population size isn't always a definitive indicator, the level of fortifications and the number of defenders often play a greater role in such situations. Nevertheless, it is clear that the Russian command has decided to push into the Dnipropetrovsk region, and their forces are steadily advancing in that direction across multiple fronts. For instance, in Novovasilivka, Russian troops have reached the village's central part. The distance from the forward positions to the Dnipropetrovsk region's border is now just 8 kilometers. This area is better fortified, both through built defenses and natural obstacles such as water barriers. However, further south, the distance from Novoyelizavetivka is over 10 kilometers, and the terrain is less fortified, meaning progress there may be faster. Analysis of Russian forces' advancements suggests that they will enter the Dnipropetrovsk region before Trump's inauguration. That's my forecast. Remember it and feel free to criticize me if I'm wrong. But based on the current pace of progress, I predict that Russian troops will enter the region by January 20th or earlier. Moving on, under Russian control now are the southern streets of Peshana and areas north of the Novotroitske River, including the village of Volkovo. Further south, Russian forces have taken nearly complete control of the village of Ukrainka, with 90% certainty. Their next likely target is Nyasenyeva. Regarding the situation in Makarivka, where a Ukrainian platoon was reportedly surrounded yesterday, Russian troops required only 24 hours to complete the clearing operation, and the village is now fully under Russian control. Reports confirm this, along with the nearby village of Storozheve, where the Russian flag has already been raised. This newly captured territory spans approximately 13.5 square kilometers. In the Kurakhove district, advances were recorded in 2 areas. Russian forces began moving toward the sewage treatment facilities, covering just over 1 kilometer from the village of Dalny yesterday. Additionally, the area from Stary Turny to Shevchenko is confirmed to be under stable control of the 114th Brigade. Lastly, let's briefly discuss the situation in the Kharkiv region. Let's shift our focus here. There are 2 updates to discuss. First, the village of Lozova, note not to be confused with the large city of the same name in the Kharkiv region, has come under Russian control. Additionally, battles for the village of Zarizov are nearing completion. Even on the map, you can see that fighting is now confined to the southern part of the village, while the northern and central parts are firmly under the control of Russian forces. Overall, the Russian army's advances are measured not in square kilometers, but in dozens of square kilometers daily. Between December 22nd and 23rd alone, over 50 square kilometers came under Russian control. The pace of the offensive remains steady, and in some cases, such as yesterday, it has even increased. Kurakhove direction as of December 25th. The battles for the Kurakhove thermal power plant are intensifying. The Kurakhove pocket is gradually tightening. Russian forces, having cleared all residential areas of Ukrainian units, have begun assault operations in the vicinity of the Kurakhove TPP. The facility itself has been heavily damaged, and the attack is being carried out from two directions. From the west, forces of the 114th Motorized Rifle Brigade are advancing, while the 5th Brigade is pushing from the east. For now, there is no full-scale assault. Reconnaissance operations are underway to identify Ukrainian defensive positions, which are subsequently targeted by artillery, aviation, and drones. Meanwhile, Russian troops are attempting to bypass Kurakhove from the south, cutting off the remaining supply routes for the Ukrainian grouping entrenched at the station. Fighting also continues in the areas of Shevchenko, Petropavlivka, and south of Ulakli. However, no advances were reported there yesterday. The pocket between Sontsevka and Stary Terny has officially come under Russian control. Toretsk situation. Units of the Center Group, under the command of Colonel General Andrei Mordvichev, are close to capturing Toretsk. Currently, about one-third of the city, mainly its northern and northwestern parts, remains under Ukrainian control. The American Institute for the Study of War notes in its analytical reports that the Russian army is conducting continuous offensive operations in the Toretsk direction. Specifically, in the northern part of the city, assault units have crossed the railway tracks and entrenched themselves on Ukrainian street. OSINT analysts highlight that this could open new opportunities for further advances toward the suburb of Krimska and beyond to Dakhna. Despite Toretsk's seemingly inevitable fall, remnants of the Ukrainian garrison continue to resist fiercely. ISW, citing the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, reports counterattacks north of the central mine landfill. Fighting persists in Toretsk itself and in the areas of Shcherbanivka and Petrovka, both west of Toretsk. Russian forces are actively fortifying their positions near the central mine slag heap, which remains a contested grey zone. ISW, citing Ukrainian military sources, notes the use of Russian heavy armored vehicles and light all-terrain vehicles for reconnaissance and support in assault operations on the outskirts of Toretsk. Before the war, the mining town of Toretsk had a population of over 30,000. Today, aerial photos of the city show fire-blackened apartment buildings with shattered windows and partially destroyed high-rises. Ukrainian forces are forced to hide from Russian artillery and FPV drones in basements and the ruins of destroyed buildings, reports Al Jazeera. Strategic goals. According to OSINT analysts at ISW, the Russian army's primary goal remains capturing strategic points and optimizing positions for a possible offensive on Kostyantinivka, 11 kilometers northwest of Toretsk and 5 kilometers southwest of Chasiv Yar. Tactical encirclement and clearing of Toretsk's entire western outskirts could facilitate planning for subsequent operations. The progress of Russian forces is attributed not only to combat actions, but also to effective logistical support. Control over key roads is critical to maintaining troop combat readiness in the long term. This will be decisive for a successful offensive on Kostyantinivka, writes Al Jazeera.